So it is a balmy 82 degrees here in New Hampshire, which is, about time. We had a really nasty winter, and it seemed a lot colder for a lot longer than it really should have been. So 82 degrees is quite the change. Seemingly almost overnight, we went from really, really, really cold weather to bouncing back and forth between cold and warm weather to now 82 degrees. So there we have it. Last week I was on vacation, so I didn't really get to write any post for Friday. Anything that I had last week was pre-scheduled the week before, which okay. Oh man, I didn't take the wrong thing. So that's why I'm a little late with this video here, because I didn't really get a chance to record anything last week, which is what I usually do. Which is kind of unfortunate because it seemed like everything seemed to go to hell last week. I wasn't disconnected from the news, so I was following the stuff that was going on, and had some time to think about it, I guess. Not that there's really, I don't know. It seemed like there's a lot of, I don't really want to say groupthink, but kind of, sort of. The first being, the whole idea of Valve and Bethesda, working together to allow, to kick off paid mods, and personally, I'm not a super huge fan of this idea for a couple of reasons. Mainly because, I'm old enough to remember when modding was a lot more high-tech than it is now, where people had to actually hack the systems in order to get, real mods in there. There were map editors. I remember working on map editors for Doom and Quake. But, you really, really, really wanted to do some modding. You had to actually get in there and work with resource files and all this other stuff. Not for the faint of heart, but, then the industry kind of embraced that and realized that, hey, people could still be buying our product if we allowed the community to, extend it. That way, they put out the base game with modding support, maybe release the modding tools, and the community will just give life to this product well beyond the point where the company would normally be supporting it. And this was even before the days where DLC was a thing, right? I remember, what the hell was it? One of the Elder Scrolls games, Morrowind? Hell, I think even Daggerfall ended up with a, map editor, so you can go in and add stuff, which is kind of prescient considering that Bethesda was, in cahoots with Valve over this idea that, modders could be allowed to charge for their mods, which, allowing them to charge for their mods is a very, very specific line in the sand, because normally companies, and especially Bethesda, I like Bethesda's games, okay, so, and I know I've really been bitchy about them in the past, but I like their games a lot. They do really good work, but they have been particularly litigious when it comes to protecting their IPs. So, the idea that a modder is charging for something that utilizes a Bethesda product, I think, 5 years, 10 years ago, might have earned them a cease and desist letter. Okay, but now, Bethesda and Valve tried to find a way to allow modders to charge for their mods. But, that is partially a, closing the door after the horses get out kind of situation. Modders could never charge for it, but they also could accept, donations for their time. Nobody seemed to have a problem with that, I don't think. But allowing people to put a wholesale price on their mod really came down to less of allowing modders to charge for it and more like, how can we, make money off of people who are doing something that has always traditionally been done strictly for the love of doing it, right? And that, I think that's my problem, right? People have been modding for generations now for free because they love it. And I'm not saying that it should always be free, carte blanche across the board, always be free. But I am saying that I don't trust the general public to accurately price their products, because I don't think that the general public has the acumen to determine what is a decent price. And yeah, I mean, if they price it too high, people won't buy it. If they price it too low, maybe it's not worth their while. But I guess even if you were giving away your mod for free one day, and then you charge 99 cents for it the next day, as soon as someone pays that 99 cents, you're technically ahead of the game. Right? Technically. But the pricing differential between who got what, I think that was really what a lot of the community didn't like about it. They saw it kind of for what it was, which was Bethesda's getting the lion's share, Valve's getting the silver medal, and modders basically get a pile of fish heads, comparatively, right? Now people can say, of course, well, Bethesda made the game in the first place, and they're graciously allowing you to charge for it, so of course they get the lion's share. And Valve's hosting your mod, and they're making it discoverable for people, so sure, they're doing a lot of work too. But, really, it's the modder that actually set out to do all of this work, probably with, little training, no official support beyond just simply what the game allows them to do, and, the desire to actually have this done. And I really think that if they had gotten the lion's share of the money, then there would have been less of an outcry. I still think that Valve would have rolled it back. I still think that a lot of people would have bitched and complained about it. Simply because, again, this is something that has been free for decades, and the idea that now all of the mods that I have maybe installed for Skyrim is going to end up totaling more than the cost of Skyrim itself if I want to keep using these mods. And, let's face it, this community really likes to get its panties in a bunch when you start talking about, cash for content beyond the box cost. So I can't even imagine under what circumstances Valve and Bethesda thought that this was really going to fly. They probably really thought that modders would get dollar signs in their eyes with the idea of being officially sanctioned to go ahead and charge everyone who wanted to download their mod. But those people are few compared to the people who actually use them, and I just think the backlash was inevitable. So there's that. Second thing, of course, that was going on last week was this whole debacle about the Heroes of the Dorm being broadcast on ESPN 2. It is a manufactured controversy that unfortunately a lot of the gaming community fell for as engineered. This community has a very thin skin when it comes to insults, slights. It's a historical thing. I mean, I actually thought of how I would present this, my particular take on this particular thing, more or less all last week. I was thinking, I was laying in bed and I'm like, oh man, yeah, okay. The one thing that came to my mind was this. In high school, there was a student whose name was Creighton. Okay. He was a little, I really don't know what his issue was. Maybe he was suffering from some kind of mental illness or something, but for the most part, he would just kind of, go to class like everybody else. he was overly friendly. He would talk to a lot of people, but he was kind of dorky, and of course his mental state kind of made him an easy target for people to pick on. And a lot of people found it funny because when you do pick on him, he would explode like an IED. Okay, I mean, this kid would he would take out everything around him, whether you bumped into him in the hallway on purpose or even by accident. Okay, and people would mess with him on purpose because our high school had kind of a narrow hallways. He would flip out, basically stop all traffic. Now, in between classes, of course, that traffic gets pretty heavy in a high school corridor. Basically stop traffic in both directions while he screamed and flipped out. And it was actually a valid excuse that if you were late to class, you could say Creighton was flipping out in the hallway, and the teachers accepted that. Okay, because everybody knew it, right? And, I kept coming back to this, memory, because that's exactly a lot of the times how the gaming community is. And therefore, the comments by this Colin Cowherd, I don't know whether it's actually Coward or Cowherd. Either way, it's a silly name. His comments, bullseye. And because of that, I cannot imagine that this situation was not entirely engineered strictly for PR purposes. I mean, we're living in the age of, narrow band, very targeted talk radio, hosts who know exactly who they're broadcasting to. They know the exact things to say to get them all riled up, to play to the crowd, and basically, to pander. And I really think that it was absolutely no mistake that, based on the words that were chosen, the phrases that were used, the idea that Cowherd's comments, the picture that they painted. I'm kind of torn between being irritated by his comments and, wanting to stand up and give applause for such a really carefully crafted PR, situation here. Basically, him going on a rant about how he would rather shoot himself than to, officiate, an esports broadcast. Okay, along with basically everything else that he said, including relying on that age-old chestnut that nerds are living in their parents' basement, which really great. Considering the rest of the delivery and the crafting of the PR, I'm actually kind of sad that's what they relied on. I mean, they really could have done better than that. But for one thing, nobody would ask him to do that. Okay, because nobody outside of his core demographic knew who the fuck this guy was until last week, and now he's got an entire subculture who knows exactly who the hell he is. But that doesn't mean that we've actually tuned in to listen to his shit. Maybe this guy could be the Rush Limbaugh of sports world, sports talk radio. I don't know. I suspect that he probably is something like that, simply because one doesn't go from a thoughtful commentator to a raging, spitting insult machine, overnight. But, it is what it is, all right? So, nobody would ask him to officiate anything like this, but, and this is the kicker. This is why I think it's totally engineered and how we totally fell for it, because, the fact remains that the geek community is no longer something that is forced underground. I mean, last weekend, what was the big movie? Avengers. Based on a comic book, which is, of course, a sequel to a veritable shitload of other superhero movies that people have thrown money at over the years. And it's not even just the Avengers, it's everything. I mean, Harry Potter, we got the Hunger Games, we got fucking Star Wars is going to basically cause worldwide blackouts next year. So these are the things that, you know, got people beat up 30 years ago when I was a kid, right? If you had admitted that you liked Star Wars and all played Dungeons and Dragons and all this other shit. And that's the kind of stereotype that this rant, relied on. It was the jocks versus the nerds, which is so mind-blowingly out of date that I cannot fathom how this particular rant would find purchase anywhere except among those who are used to being professionally offended, right? I mean, come on. It's so transparent that this is designed to generate controversy. Whether this dude actually cares about, he said, I guess, that he's, since he got older, he stopped caring about all this fantasy crap. And it's like, well, that's fine, dude. That's fine. I suppose that means he's never seen, Harry Potter or the Avengers or, any of the Lord of the Rings movies, or, no one in his family cares about or is allowed to read, the Hunger Games, or fuck it, even 50 Shades of Grey, let's be honest. Okay, that shit would not exist if it weren't for wider adoption of things that are considered to be geeky, because, that's what geekdom and nerddom is really about. It's about this obsessive fandom, which, okay, let's call a spade, is exactly what sports is about. I mean, where else would you have people ripping off their shirts and painting their bodies, I got nothing else to say on that. That pretty much speaks for itself. But, seriously, sports fans are just as geeky about their shit as geeks are about their shit. I mean, and, fantasy football, as they say, is basically D&D for sports fans, okay? That's exactly what it is. You're taking little characters who are represented by numbers, and you're putting them up against other characters who are represented by numbers. And really, the whole argument as to whether or not esports are actually sports, I think, is kind of ludicrous, because, people are focused on the physicality of sports, but that's not at all what it is. Sports, at their core, are about competition. And that's really what we're showcasing here in broadcasting things like Heroes of the Dorm. It's not about whether these people sit on their ass or whether they're running around and bumping into each other on a gigantic field. It's about the competition. It's about the spirit and the excitement of come behind wins and, overcoming adversity, being the underdog. All of that, that's what people are after. Nobody cares. Nobody really tunes in specifically because of the outfits, the helmets, the beauty of the lawn and the field, or anything like that. That's all just trappings. Everybody tunes in for the competition, and that's exactly why I think esports is valid as a sport.